Okay, when you look in your packet on the left-hand side, there's information about the Collie Health Foundation. On the right-hand side is your seminar information. If you are not a member of the Collie Health Foundation, you don't get out of this room today. Only kidding. Maybe.
Maybe.
As a caretaker of Collie, one of the important things that you have as your responsibility is to make sure that these dogs are as healthy as possible. And that's on a personal level with what you do in your kennel, and it's on a global level for what we do to keep this breed the best breed in the world. The Collie Health Foundation takes the funds that they accumulate and that we give them, and they do marvelous work with it, and I am not the person to tell you everything that they do, although I have used their services. I pass the information along to my puppy owners because they are also a caretaker of the breed. This is something that we need to do, and Krista's going to go over that information with you in a minute. I'd like you, again, to look at your folder. We have information there about our panelists, and I would like you to give these wonderful people a round of applause for giving us their time.
Ahead of time. It's in case they don't like it.
They are charming, they are witty, they are funny. They are not long-winded, they are purposeful. The conversations that we had with them, you didn't want to hang up the phone because it just evolved. And the learning that went on there, I'm going to tell you, my head was just spinning each time I spoke with another one. And something that was truly amazing was woven into this tapestry that you are going to participate in today were the same themes. And they didn't talk to each other about it. So their devotion to this breed goes deep. And it's very scary when you hear them quoting almost verbatim the standard. It's like it's etched in their memory. So that was remarkable. The next thing I want to do is I want to introduce your Breed Ed team, and I'm going to tell you they are the heart, soul, and brains behind what you see right now. Their energy is beyond that puppy that you've given the bath and they've let it go. It's unbelievable. And I want you to stand up to be recognized. Nancy McDonald. Barbara Cleek. Barbara's outside the door. Barbara, you want to peek in?
No. Yay.
Debbie Holland. New to our group, and anybody that would jump into this with both feet running has got to be someone special. Larry Parsons. Not present is Candy Wisniewski. She couldn't make it today. And we have another new member, and that's Mary Robichon, and she will be here on Wednesday. So when you see them, be sure to thank them personally. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this. A lot of giggling, too. So enjoy. So you have your panelist page, and you've got some other information. We'll talk about that as it goes. As you have questions, raise your hand, and Barbara will be our Vanna. She'll be running around with the microphone to make sure that what you say is going to feed into the camera. This will be a professional job. This one is going to work. And this will be available for you so that you could go back and really pick in on all the information that we have for you. But for now, we have Krista here, and she is going to tell us about the Health Foundation.
Good morning. I was asked to introduce you to our new website. If you haven't already visited, it was a labor of love that took a good year to formulate the plan and thoughts that went into it. The left-hand bar is sort of a quick post. Joan Johnson, who's our webmaster, can put stuff up there quickly if we have an announcement. For instance, our press release on our bloat initiative. The Collie Health Foundation just invested $50,000 along with 10 other breed clubs and the AKC Canine Health Foundation to study and educate about bloat. Yep, we need to figure that one out because that's not a good thing. Contact us is on the sidebar, Nancy. That's actual who does what and what they do and their contact information, so it lets you know kind of who's working on what and where we might need help. We always need help. Okay. I'll start from left to right, Nancy. The logo story, that dog was a real dog. And I had the pleasure to know him and love him. So read that. I don't know if I can talk about it, but we'll move on to the next thing because I can't talk about it. But everything is written there for you to see who he was. Announcements are anything that's current. That was Joan Johnson's brilliance. That totally fits that page. This will be, the whole website will be an evolving thing as we gain information. So don't think you know it today because next week it may contain different information. We have up on the announcements page the subsidies that the Collie Health Foundation is offering for genetic testing in progressive retinal atrophy. We're also doing MDR1, and I think that's it for this year. Collie eye. Yes, Collie eye. I knew I was forgetting something. But anything that's current, we've got a note about the shortage of interceptor that we get a lot of questions on, and there's a statement there that the board addressed. So anything new that doesn't fit every other category you'll find under announcements. Join, donate, and volunteer is just what it sounds like. It's a quick, easy way to join or donate in memory of, in celebration of. You finish a champion and you want to celebrate through the foundation. That's a great way to go. And again, we always need volunteers. There's also a form on there for your will codicil that you can fill out and give to your attorney so that they know that your desire to include the Collie Health Foundation in your will is an easy way to do that. Health issues is one of my pride and joys of the website. There's articles in the first button on many of the issues that we do deal with. There's a whole list: dermatomyositis, OFA, PenHip, degenerative myelopathy, multi-drug sensitivity, chick, bloat, and eye disease. So there's a place to get more information. And again, I'd like to keep that evolving too. I've got an article that I want to write as soon as I can get my hands on a book and get the research done on it. But again, the site is always evolving. DNA banking. We have a means to store DNA for future testing, whether it be for yourself or for a research study. So that can be done at any time before the dog dies. And we've done, a few dogs have been tested recently that have been stored, and the DNA was still intact and in good shape. So a study can come along and a dog can be used even though they've passed. So, please, especially if you're breeding a dog and it's being used, then consider banking his DNA because it might prove fruitful down the road. Testing and research. This was the brainchild of Michelle Brain. Ha, ha, ha. When I put out a notice to everyone asking for help and the topics that I wanted to cover, she immediately chose the hardest one. And she did a phenomenal job of it. This chart has every available test, an explanation of it, the company that deals with it, how the tests are done, links to the websites for the research labs, and studies. You know, if you've got a dog that bloats, well, here you go. Here's the researchers who are working on it that you can contact. You've got a dog with von Willebrand. You've got a dog with cancer. There's research studies out here, and you can find researchers who are looking for candidates for their studies, which is so important, because what good does a study do without affected dogs that are affected with those things that they can include in the study. So this is an amazing chart that she drew up and is a great resource tool. So, and she's going to keep it going with any new information. So it will evolve and change just like everything else. Grants, that's going to be changing in the next few weeks. So like I said, stop back. The overview, there's information for researchers here so that they can know what the process that we employ in giving them money. If they want to do a research project that they might get money for, this tells them the process. There's also a button for past grants, so you can see where we've put our money over the 25 plus years that we've been active per year and what we've invested in. Organization is our officers, board of directors, corporators, and who's serving which years. We have four-year terms that rotate, and our board of directors, and contact information for all those people so that if you're looking for more information. And then the President's Award is given out every year to an outstanding volunteer for the foundation. And this list is everyone who has won, and you can only win once. So these are all the hardworking people over the years that have been honored.
And Nancy Kelso got it twice.
I'm working on that. That's on my list to do after the national. Yes, I know it's a learning curve for this list. So don't worry about it. I know about it, and it'll be corrected when I wasn't going to harass Joan the week of the national. And this is our bylaws. Yes, you are. You're doing very well. Our bylaws, how we do things, why we do things, all boiled down to the simple purpose of conducting research and supporting it and educating breeders and the public to things related to the Collie. Events. Our Sunnybank gathering has become the place to go in August for the year. I had Joan set up a gallery with pictures that were taken back then and pictures that are current at Sunnybank. And everything is labeled with which dogs, so if you want to see what Wolf looked like, you can find that here. I tried to include every major dog that were in the books. The place. I think there's even Tippy the cat in there somewhere. So it's a nice way to see. If you haven't been, you can see what everything looks like. And our auctions here at the National. We always have some amazing things at the night auction, and the day auction we have running each day raises all kinds of money that we need to do the work that we do. And it's a lot of fun. If you've never been to a live auction, it's a blast. We offer seminar grants. If you have a club that wants to do an educational seminar, the foundation will subsidize it. You have to go through Carmen Leonard, and it does have to be research grant. You have to provide information such as how many you expect to attend, what your expenses are, what the program will be. and you might get a little help financially with your expenses. We also offer a award for Best Junior Handler. If your club is a Collie Health Foundation member and you're holding a show, we'll offer a foundation membership to Best Junior, one per year per club. And that's a good way to bring in our new generation. The store is a work in progress, but we do have some things up. All through PayPal, you can order what we have up there. She's working on a whole bunch of new stuff, but that's a project. She's new at it, so we need to get all the information to update. But our brushes, our ornament, the lanyards, the bloke kits have been in existence for many years. So that's the place to go if you're Christmas shopping. It's a good way to help the Collie and to help your friends. Newsletters are archived on the website. So if you're new to the foundation and haven't seen some of these back issues, they're just a click away. You can open one and see that issue. Links for various Collie-related sites, so it's a quick, easy find. Collie Club of America, Collie Rescue Foundation, the American Kennel Club, their Canine Health Foundation, American Working Collie Association, their rescue, Southland Collie Rescue, Collies Online, Collie Expressions, and the DNA Storage Lab for DNA banking. And the last is the gallery. Just assorted pictures, Sunnybank being the favorites. Does anybody have any questions?
Did you bring application forms?
I believe that they did. They're in the packet.
Can they hand them to you today?
They can.
Okay. Just when we take a break, give her the form. We'll give you extra coffee.
What's that one?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just my stuff that I wrote down for myself. If I don't write it down, I can't remember.
Great job, Krista.
So panelists, your first question. And as you have questions, raise your hand. Be patient because Barbara Cleet and I are going to be running back and forth to pass this mic so that your question will feed into the machine so that we can hear you. Okay, as you developed your mental ideal of the Collie and all those virtues that you hold near and dear to you, who or what helped you along that path to develop that mental picture? Panelists?
I'll do it. John Honig and Edith Levine. John Honig and Edith Levine. I first met John at a dog show in Boston. It was a bench show, and he introduced himself to us. It was in 1963, and we went and we watched his dogs being shown, and he had Champion Stony Creek Reflection there and Champion Malin's Welcome Reflection there. And John, when I saw those dogs in image, it set for me the virtues that I was looking for in a Collie. And when we finally moved to New York, I met Edith Levine, and Edith taught me the value of what to look for when I'm looking for a dog that I want to use. And she also taught me a work ethic that meant that you had to carry out her buckets for her on a regular basis. And she had a tremendous number of friends who always seemed to show up at her house, and we would have a soiree. And of course, I being the newly one and the most novice, I wasn't allowed to say anything except ask, which flash are you talking about? Because at that time, I think there was about 6 that were running around. Sally could tell you how many. And you learned by listening. You gained a knowledge of what was important and what wasn't. And the other thing is that I joined the Collie Club of Long Island, at which time there were about 150 members. And we would hold monthly meetings, and that was like going to college for a lecture. I mean, you had Mrs. Long, you had Brian Carabine, you had Sally, you had Edith, you had Doris Werdeman, you had Mrs. Gray from time to time. Everyone who was anyone in that section of the country would come to these meetings, and you just learned. And I don't see anybody, I don't know about your clubs, but my club in New Hampshire, I mean, we've always only had 12 members, so we can't say we've lost any. You know, when one goes, there's another one who comes in. But I don't see that happening. The big clubs are not there anymore. And I think we're losing something very important. Okay, that's it.
Well, I think we just go down the line then. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good. One thing I'd like to say before we go into any part of my presentation is when I look around the room here, I'm wondering now, why are these people here? I mean, they've already proven themselves that they know something about breeding collies. And I wish we had more young people. As I look over the crowd, not that you're long in the tooth like I am, but this, I think, is a bit of a problem in all breeds, not just the collies. The breeding of dogs probably is in kind of a lull. You know, these things come and they go. But the purebred dog fancy is a bit stressed right now, I think. But as far as background, I grew up on a farm, had a pet collie when I was just a kid. Taught her about, I think, 24 tricks. And when she passed away when I was in junior high school, I bought a purebred from Minnetonka Kennels, which was on the way to Albert Lee, Minnesota, where my dad would often sell cattle and pigs. So I got Trig, who was of St. Adrian breeding. And before that, I remember taking Lassie, my first collie, quote unquote. She probably was about 3/4 collie. And I went through the standard with her. And the long, lean, blunted wedge. Oh, yeah, she's got that. You know, a slightly defined stop. Oh, yeah, she's got that. She had all of those features that the standard described, to my mind. And then later on, I realized that unless you have experience, the standard really is, you just cannot use the standard without having experience of seeing a lot of live dogs. And then later on, I took Trig to a dog show, and he won his his novice class because he was the only one in there. So that enticed me to go to another show with him, which I think was the Waterloo Kennel Club in Waterloo, Iowa. And I'm standing there with Trig waiting to go in, and here comes Rex Van Venter with Bull Venture. And I just took a look at Bull Venture, and I looked at Trig, I looked at Bull Venture, and I knew then that this was not a show dog, and someday I'm going to try to have a dog like Bull Venture. And that's kind of what judging is, isn't it? It's the comparison of collies. And it gets dicey when the quality gets tight, better and better and better. The hardest class, I think everybody in the panel will tell you, to judge properly is a class where there isn't really any good ones in the class. My exposure to important mentors in my early years when I was a kid was Ray Ofsted of Ray Allen Kennels, who taught me. He was a contemporary of Ed Pickhart, and Ed lived in Hopkins, Minnesota. And he taught me about the proper eye and expression on the Collie, along with Steve Field, who didn't live that far away and had a chance to visit at his place more than one time. But I also did an awful lot of kennel hopping in those days. I think I knew every kennel in Minnesota that raised collies, and you'd be amazed how many there were. And I would, on a weekend drive, and just see the dogs, Criterion collies, Kenyon, Minnesota, and on the way to Rochester, there was a kennel right next to the Highway 52. But if they were there, I went and saw the dogs. And throughout the Midwest, I visited a lot of kennels just to see them not all prettied up, you know, for the show ring. And then a lot of exposure to the Hertzville dogs, totally different type of collie in the Chicago area. But I learned to appreciate what they had, and I've never really forgotten about the Hertzville dogs with their heads. The long, clean head, the long skull, and very, very sound dogs. But that's my background, and that's kind of how it all started.
Well, Bill and I shared knowing Ed Pickhart, who was my chief mentor. I had started with a pet collie from Sunderland line, which was a leading Eastern line at the time, and came to the third generation breeding at Ed's. And today we're all so fussy about not ever taking a novice in and allowing them to breed their maybe pet bitch to our dogs because we wouldn't want to contaminate the line. But Ed saw something, I don't know what exactly, in this kid, and he let me breed my bitch to his young dog. And then he helped me choose the best daughter, and we kept her.
To talk to it. Closer.
We kept her and bred her back to another dog of his, and were allowed to breed the second generation to their champion grandfather. And through a mishap with Ed away and whatever, she had a litter of mutts and had to be spayed after producing this problem. And at which point I promptly fell off my show horse and broke my leg. So it was a pretty sad summer. And Ed called my mother and said, could I give Sally a puppy to make up for all the bad things that happened? And he came over, and here I am in a wheelchair, and put this little puppy on my lap, and that was Sterling Starberry. And that was the start of it all. And we again bred her at Sterling, and produced my first champion in the next generation. And through knowing Ed, we were taken to see Mrs. Browning's dogs and had an entree that was special. She could be a difficult person, but you know, any friend of Ed's is a friend of mine. They were great competitors, but they saw the best in each other's dogs. And it was a very strong area for collies at that time. We had successful breeders in Connecticut. When I went to work in New York, I would go out at the end of the week and stop for the Collie Club meeting and spend evenings at Edith's with Barbara and all the rest of the Carabines, the people. I met Mrs. Cummings there because she was judging at the show, and she was an old friend of Edith's. But my mentors were really too many to name because we had a great camaraderie at the time, and anybody that was willing to listen and had something to contribute was welcome. Gus Sigritz, that Anne and I share a great love for, besides Edith on Long Island. But I was lucky to and Mrs. Long, who was an icon that we all looked up to and I think tried to emulate in some way or another. But again, I met Steve as one of Ed's proteges, and that opened doors. Trudy and Jim Mangles were at just about the same time we started with the same basic Tocal and Sterling cross. And so they were working in the parallel planes with us, and we all bounced ideas off each other. We all competed at the Garden when Westminster was a 5-point major. I'm amused that people, I was just reading a magazine on the way out here, and people are saying, so-and-so was the first dog to get winners at the Garden, as though this was something new. Well, it's new again. After struggling with snowstorms and getting into New York and all like that, you could take your puppies home. They didn't have to stay for both days benched at Westminster. So we decided we'd just take puppies to the Garden. It was a lot easier. And then they discontinued the 6 to 9 puppy class, and then they discontinued the 9 to 12 class, and they cut back and cut back, so it would no longer was the great Collie show. But it used to be the one where the winners of the puppy classes were the ones that everybody would look to be the champions of next year and the following years, and that, of course, the National has taken its place. The Collie National wasn't that big a show in those days because of long distances and so on, and we got 5-point majors when 5 points, at least in our area, involved 50 or 60 dogs in the sex, not specials. But the class dogs were far more numerous than specials. It isn't like today where winning the breed is important. Anyway, I've gone on too long, so.
Pass me your. Well, my mentor was Bob. Can you hear me? My mentor was Bob Burfield. But before I forget it, I want to say one thing. The group of us up here, we don't.
Take that microphone, maybe push it up a little. There you
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Better? Okay. I won't say we always agree on everything we do, but I started looking at it. All of a sudden it dawned on me, there's not one person on this panel that we haven't, at one point or the other, been standing somewhere and going, I love, and at the same time the other person go, that dog. We don't always agree, but there has been a time that every one of us has said, oh my gosh, that's wonderful, or don't you love that dog? And so think of people as being diverse, but I could name every one of us that stood there and loved a certain dog together. So we're not as different as you think we might be. I had the best mentor in the world. There were 2 of them, Bob and Joan Burnfield. And that'll almost make me cry. I'm going to have to talk about something else for a minute. Can you cut some of this, like this part? Okay, thank you.
Let Ann talk.
Huh?
I said let Ann talk till you get back.
It's going away. They were so much fun. I'll talk about the fun stuff, but I guess the best thing they ever did for me was Bob taught continuously. Joan did most of the work. But Bob had one time we went to a show and somebody came to show him a puppy, and it's the worst looking puppy I've ever seen in my whole life. And I watched him and I thought, wait till he kills this guy, this puppy's no good. You know what he did? He said, that puppy has the prettiest, shiniest coat I've ever seen. We're at a huge show and I'm thinking, ha! And I said, why did you tell him that? And he said, why did I need to tell him how bad the dog was? That's their love, and you know what? I had to think about that for a while because I was a smart aleck who was really good at saying his tail's too high. He has almost prick ears. I could tell you all the bad things. So I learned a lot from them, and they had a lot of people that they pulled into their family. Roz and Alice. Oh my gosh. And Louise Hornaday. There are so many. You can't learn from one person, and you always can learn from a lot of people. And the good thing is, I look through here, and a lot of you people, And it's not that you teach me, it's the dogs that you come up with that's like, I want one of those. And so you're my mentors too. That's all I'm going to say. I'll cry probably or something.
Okay, I guess I'm on. My background is different in a lot of ways because when I got my first show collie, I was living in Tennessee. And at that time, as Sally will tell you, she and Bobby Woods did a statistical study. And some of you don't even know who Bobby Wood is. Bobby Wood of Smoky Wood Collies, which mostly Brandywine background, right? Anyway, they did a statistical study about how many more times it took to finish a dog in the southeast, in the southern area of the country, because there were not that many clubs, first of all, in the South, and you didn't have the hotbed of shows like you do in the Midwest, in the North and the Northeast, and California, for example. So it was different then. But here's the thing, one thing that many of you, probably most of you, don't even know, and that is that the first person who involved me, who got me involved in collies, is in this room right now, and I'd like to introduce you to him. If Lee Collins will please stand up. Let me tell you the story. Stand up. When my husband and I moved back from Florida to Tennessee, my husband went to work at Provident Life Insurance Company, which is where he met Lee, and that's how they became friends. Lee was already long involved in collies. Dot Girth was one of his dearest friends. Gus Segrets, who was my mentor, I met him, or was recommended to him by Lee Collins. He said that this young couple will do right by a good show bitch, and so we got our first show puppy from Gus. But then there were people like Dot Girth of Girthstone, I know all of you know Dot, who came to me at a show, took the brush out of my hand, and started showing me how to really groom my dog. People like that helped me get started so much. And I was just so fortunate to have Lee become friends with my husband so that we met these people. You know, and there were people in the Southeast, some of you may or may not remember them, like Noel Denton. How many of you remember Noel Denton? Of course, Doc Greathouse from Kentucky, a dear, and he also had Cherryville Collies, and Cherryville was Gus Segrets, of course, and that's where our first show puppy came from. So all these wonderful people that were willing to come up and do like Dot did, just take the brush out of my hand and show me what to do it, how to do it right. But anyway, Gus was good too because he told me what was right and wrong about the puppy that he sold me for a show puppy. He told me that her eye was a little too big, and also you always need to breed. She was extraordinarily well put together, but she had a little too much eye, and so that was a goal. And he made it clear to me that head and expression was what we all aim for, because at that time that was probably the most difficult thing to get and maintain. And so, but he also told me, and this is the funny part of my story, I guess, because he told me not only where to take my bitch to breed her and that was to Champion Paraders Country Squire, but also what to wear in the show ring. He said, don't wear those bobby socks things. You know, you wear tennis shoes with your white socks pulled up. And he said, don't wear those because when the judge watches you going around, they see that flash of white and they don't see what your dog's doing. So my point there is he stressed overall balance and structure and movement. And the first collie, Champion Cherryville Skazi was my first champion, and she was built. I can't remember who said this, it might have been Dot, that you could have put a glass of water on her hips and she could move down the ramp and not spill a drop. That's how sound she was. And she had a good head, she just needed improvement in eye. So he told me to take her to Champion Paraders Country Squire. So the beginning, and I never had met Steve Field at that point. We just sent her, she was bred and came back, and then from that litter, she had I kept a tri-male who, and this was kind of unheard of in those times, I think, except in the Midwest. But I took him to a show in Georgia. He went from the bred by exhibitor class to win the breed, and at that time it was the working group, not the herding group, and then on to win best in show and finish. And I was so clueless about any of what this and this meant. I had a handler come by and he says, "Do you know what happened? Did you know what happened?" And I said, "Yeah, he finished." But I was so, and this was, I know many of you probably have had this same kind of start where you get real lucky with the first dog or two that you get and they finish them pretty quickly. But this was, to me, I was so dumb. I did not know the significance of any of this stuff. And in the South, we had so few specialty shows then that I showed mostly at all breed shows and finished many of my dogs through going to all breed shows then because there were more of them close at hand. And it was a wonderful experience to have so many people take someone who knew so little and try to help them in any way that they could. And I'm talking about grooming, bathing your dog. I had another friend there in Chattanooga, Edna Ragland, that was another friend of Lee's, and she taught me how to lead train my dog. And the only mistake she made that I know of is that she was trying to teach me how to do toenails, and that turned out to be a disaster. And I still don't do toenails very well to this day. But anyway, the whole process of getting involved in collies was just like reading the Lassie stories all over again. I finally had the collie that I wanted, but then of course it grew from there, and then I had more collies that came along that we showed and finished, and many wonderful people like Noel, people that befriended me and told me, they didn't always tell me what to do, but they showed me in many cases. So we went to a lot of all-breed shows, more probably than many people in this room ever go to, except for a few of you. But I learned from going to the all-breed shows that you could see the overall balance of the dog, and you could stand back and look at a class of dogs and pick out the ones almost at that time which were your better specimens, and then you go up, of course, and you walk to the front of them, or you have them turn, and you look at the head and face and go over that clearly, and you get your expression and your head qualities, and then you make your final determination. And in judging, for me, this was really important starting out this way because it gave me a whole dog picture in my for my experience to look at, and I've been real fortunate in that stayed with me as I showed more and more, and that most of my dogs were built correctly, and that's a problem that I think that it's very important that we focus on, because we do need to have not only healthy dogs in terms of their overall health, but their physical stature and their ability to do the work that a collie is designed for as well.
Are you finished?
I'm finished.
I know I'm going to have to use this. Nobody will ever hear
Okay.
me.
I've got a teacher's voice.
Is that good?
No.
No. Is that good?
You're going to stay really close to it.
Are you sure? Is that any better? Yeah. Okay. First of all, I think a lot of us should be so lucky as to still have one of our mentors that we thought so much of to still be here.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing, really, when you think about it, when you put all of our ages together.
Please don't.
I was kind of like Bill in getting my start with, I had a love for an aunt's farm collie, and I just thought he was the most beautiful dog in the world. And I was the oldest in a large family, so this dog gave me a lot of attention and made me feel special. And I couldn't wait until I grew up and got married and I could buy myself a collie. But when I did, the people, there's a lot of people that contributed. There's a few that you would really consider your real mentors. But I joined the Mason-Dixon Collie Club in 1963, I think it was. And there was a group of people in there at that time that all seemed very knowledgeable. Some of them were younger, were more my own age, but most of them had been at it for a while. And then maybe a year or two after I joined that, Bobby Ruse and her husband moved to that area, and that added to the mix. But a lot of the learning was in, as I'm not sure if it was Sally said, you had monthly meetings of your club, and it was, you covered the business in a real short period of time, but the people sat around and talked about dogs for hours, and you just sat there and listened and you learned. Some of it was sort of in a negative way, because you could tell the people that just wanted to talk and didn't know what they were talking about. But I had people in that club like, and in the Maryland and Virginia area, like, of course, Bobby. I got my first show Collie from the Ruses in, I think it was 1965, I can't remember. And there were people like Marion Durholtz and Mary Hutchinson, and even Bob Hawkins was in that club, and he seemed to study the breed at a very young age, and he was very knowledgeable. And I remember probably the hardest part of the Collie I had trouble picturing in my mind what they were talking about was the stop. And I probably drove Bob and a few of those other people just nuts trying to figure out what a stop was. But they were probably that group of people, and sitting around listening to them and participating in some of the club activities and going to matches. And at matches especially, I found the breeders to be more relaxed and more willing to answer questions to a newcomer and, you know, things like that. But, you know, if I had to pick one person, it would be hard, because all of those people contributed so much. And then, like Patty, over the years, you get to know people all over the country, and you see what they're doing with their breeding, and that you say, I learned something from looking at that. And just recently, in this recent show season where I live in North Carolina, I had one of those moments that just about knocked me off my feet, and I said, you really are never too old to learn. And that's about all I have to say, except I would like to say, when Ann was talking about Bob Wood, I remember the first time I saw an advertisement for his dog, Champion Brandwin the Gray Ghost. There was something about that dog when you talk about a regal-looking collie, and he was a nice dog. I never saw him in person, but what always struck me, and it still, I think, is the best combination I ever heard for a dog's registered name and what the dog was actually called. The dog's name was Spook.
Okay. I think what you can gather from the thread that was wound through all these conversations is the importance of club activities, matches, potlucks, kennel hopping, basically the opportunity for people to get together and to do pretty much what we're doing today. This is on a grand scale. But if you have a club in your area, don't forget to have the opportunity. I'm being shy. Don't forget to have the opportunity to give those opportunities to each other. It's a gift. You can have wow moments no matter how long you've been in it or how little you've been in it, but we have to provide those opportunities. We're not getting any younger in here, and that point was made to us earlier. And if we don't draw those young people in and encourage them, where will our Collie be in 20 years? So a very good point. Yes, Patty.
Can I add something for the clubs? This is where we have a little bitty club, so you don't have a lot you can do. Kathy Peters has so many tapes. We've been getting everybody's interviews, and we'll do it as a little educational, and the questions that come from the interviews are magnificent. You know, so Kathy Peters, if you don't know who that is, you need to write it down.
And she is probably the most energetic person
Oh
I
my
have
gosh.
ever spoken to on the phone. And she follows it up with 7 to 12 emails.
Yes.
So you will have more information than you know what to do with. Cherville's darn minute. Nancy said, "Oh, I have a treat for you," and we open up this email, and there's a video of the dog that we didn't even know existed. So Breeded has decided that we are going on a road trip this summer to Kathy's.
Yeah.
And she said, "You'll need to stay a month." And it's like, probably not the group to say that to. But you need to make contact with her. That's a resource that your club has that we're really not taking advantage of. So Kathy Peters, keep that in mind.
I've known Kathy for, I think, about 40 years. And she is one of these wonderful people who no one knows about. She's been a hidden person. She doesn't ask for anything. She doesn't try to be, something that very important. But she is doing work that is the most amazing thing. I mean, if there is anyone who deserves the right
Stuff.
Yeah, the one from it's Kathy, because she's been doing it now. She worked with Paige Elliott. She's worked with, she was very instrumental in working with Paige with the Gate film. She's an unbelievable resource and a very dear friend and funnier than anyone I know.
Write that name down, Kathy Peters. She is on the committee list. If you go to the CCMA website, and you look up our archivist, she is unbelievable. Okay, you gave us insight as to who your mentors were and what they meant to you and how they helped you to develop the vision you have as a collie. Look back to our standard and to those people who put the standard together. What is your interpretation of the standard that they developed for us all? Barbara, we'll start with you again.
With me again, okay. When I read the standard, and I do this before every time I judge, and I've been judging since 1970, so it's a lot of reading. I always come back to the term balanced. All of the elements of the dog, the head, the structure, the gait, are represented by the word balance. The Collie is a long-trotting breed, and probably some of the people I've been working on doing a structure paper, and all of them say that the Collie standard is the best standard for a long-trotting breed. The body is longer than it is tall. It's balanced. It has the angulation front and rear that are balanced, and the parts of the front and rear, the bones are balanced, and the angles are balanced. In addition to that, there is a dominant on all right, the Collie is basically like a wild canine in what nature has intended, to have an animal trot long ways. And therefore, it's a dominant. But when you start fooling around with this dominance is when we start getting in trouble. Paige and I, at one time, she was a very dear friend, we started looking at standards. And every standard that calls for an elongated stifle in comparison to the length of the rear pastern and the foot has hip dysplasia problems. Not every dog, but they have it. When I start seeing this being called for, or people trying to do this, I just say, instead of not having doing anything wrong or any harm, you are harming the breed, because new people see this and think it's correct, and it's not. I think the front angulation and the rear angulation should be equal. The length of bones in the front should equal the length of bones in the back. And I think that the angle and length of bone in the rear should be balanced. The two ends should match, and when they do very well. I mean, I had Impromptu Bert Norton, who Tommy took and went best in show with. He was perfectly balanced. He was straight, but he was perfectly balanced. And he looked like he was moving very, very well. he did a lot of winning. He was a very beautiful dog. And it was interesting. Everyone said, well, why did you sell him, and not keep him? And I said, because I got Mingus and he was better. The other thing that is important to know is that all of the parts of the head are balanced. And I can remember Edith saying, you don't breed a long-headed dog to a short-headed dog because you're going to get uneven parts because the jaws don't match. And she was really a fanatic about the fact that you should not ever keep an undershot dog. I think that the emphasis on the standard is being ignored maybe most of the time by the younger people because they're seeing an image that they like rather than placing the standard on the dog. They're placing the dog on the standard and trying to change it. Okay, your turn.
Whoa. What was the question again?
I was going to say, she needed to repeat the question because she didn't answer the
Oh, that.
That's standard.
She needed to repeat the question
Well,
again because Barbara didn't answer.
I think if you read standards of other breeds, if you're going for other breeds and you're judging, it's amazing how many of them sound alike, and yet the dog they're describing is so different. I mean, it's so different. So again, I'll go back to the fact that it's just a word picture that's kind of a help, But our standard is different than most of the other standards. I mean, it is written absolutely beautifully. And it gives a little bit of leeway. For instance, it says that they're a trifle longer than they are tall. And they'll use little modifying adjectives all of the time about, so that it gives the breeders, I think, a little bit of leeway. And it kind of what I related to is some of the artistry that we see nowadays with our collies is too precise. It's too many angles, too sharp, and not that soft, rounded look that is so important in the collie. And that's where I don't think the artistry of Mary Kittredge has ever been topped. I mean, that gets you the absolute picture that I like of puppies playing and adults lying down when they look at you. And I think that for me the standard is a blueprint, but it needs a interpretation, I think, with live dogs. There are obvious emphasis in the standard over and over. Expression is mentioned time and again, but yet it never really says exactly what that expression should be. It gives you some suggestions about what the expression alert and sweet is used in the standard too. Now, for me, a female collie has a different expression than a male collie, and they should have, in my opinion. And that's one of the things I think I like about the collie standard is that it gives a lot of suggestions. It also makes a great deal about the overall picture of the dog, and like Barbara said, the balance is mentioned over and over again. And as a judge, I think the lack of balance is widespread in the breed, and always has been. And it does make the difference between, I think, a great collie and a good one. The balance is extremely important. When they say that dogs should stand naturally straight and firm, that means that when you stop the dog, he should stop straight and firm. He should be completely balanced so that if you push him, he doesn't fall over. like some of them can and almost do. When he goes around the corner in the ring, he should be balanced. It should be easy for him to take that corner. You know, when they talk about the stop, for instance, all it says really is that it's a slight stop and where it is, the midpoint of the eye. That's about it.
Barely
you know?
perceptible.
And it's barely perceptible. So it gives you leeway. But when you see a good one, you know right away what they're talking about.
You talked about how much better our standard is than so many, and we don't use the word medium all the time, as too many of them do. When you're judging other breeds and you're reading your standards and so on, you wonder what medium really means, and it can often mean just common. But to me, the first thing about the standard is that it describes a dog that you can see across a field and you know it's a collie. It's not a greyhound, it's not a boxer, it's not anything else. It has the symmetry and elegance that is in a collie, whether he's a rough or a smooth. And that is the essence of it. The general impression of the dog is what all the parts go into to make that dog a collie. And I think the people that wrote our standard were thinking of that picture, and they were very good at putting into words what they intended. They were looking at the best dogs of their time, whether it was the original people who wrote the English standard in the 1870s, or people like Pickart and Ed Myers, who was a real wordsmith and master of language, who enunciated very clearly in as few words as possible to make it available to people of varying backgrounds and all that didn't have as much knowledge as they did. But it's I would go with the thing that expression when you're close to a collie, when you enter into his own space, is the thing that sets the dog apart. But that the overall picture is the most important thing of a collie.
What I think that everybody knows is I've had the best things in the standard, but on different dogs. And that's what happens is we can't, I've never found the perfect one. I found some I thought were awfully close. I didn't happen to own them, but the thing on expression and balance are things we have to think about. Something that really bothers me today is the amount of trimming. You know, when they say shape, they mean God's given shape, not the whacker shape. And we're not blind, deaf, or dumb. You know, it may from the ringside look really good. When you get right up on it, sometimes I'll put that dog up, but usually I'm going like this to the person, and it means, what is this? It's not pretty. You've taken away from the prettiness. If the people on the outside were judging by applause, they could win. When you come in, please quit trimming them so whacked up. Because for two things, part of the expression says, does it say, not excessive coat, does it say that anywhere? Excessive? Does it say that anywhere? I didn't read that part. Excessive coat.
It says abundant.
I know, but what excessive is what I'm saying is,
Right.
And fitting.
who got over this? Remember how you say this, that the dog didn't have enough coat? Well, the other part is the dog had too much coat. And we have to take care of these dogs. And we sell these dogs. Why are we making them with carbunk? So my parts of the standard is, I love expression, I love balance. Stop is like something that took me forever to figure it out, and the terminology. And you cannot talk. You have to show it, because I had a fight with Carmen Leonard for years. We were on the phone, and we kept saying, that dog has too much stop. And she said, it doesn't. And I mean, we fought. What the problem was is I was saying too much, meaning this way. She was saying too much, meaning humpy. So we were fighting over. So that's why when somebody says something, you can't learn by a book. You have to see it. And you have to be there to say, no, I mean too little stop. And it's like, I get it, because too much and too little. But the standard's there for us to follow. We don't need collies that look like anything else. Mm-mm. So that's all. They're conversing. What do you want?
Okay.
Your turn.
Okay. There's probably not anything that's been said so far that the rest of us don't pretty much agree with and would echo maybe in different words. But one of the things...
Mike.
Oh, mine's not working?
Your voice isn't.
That one doesn't go out to them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. There's probably not anything that has been said so far that most of us up here won't agree with. Maybe we might say it a little differently. But the key is that we all are pretty much in accord on how important balance of the dog is. And one of the best tools that, and I couldn't hear very well what was said before all the way down the table, so I'm assuming that maybe it was not mentioned yet about the illustrated standard, the Lorraine Still. Did someone mention that?
Nope.
Okay. Over here on the table, Tony, if you could find it for me and just sort of hold it up. But the illustrated standard by Lorraine Still has been one of the learning tools that has helped me along the way. And I was telling Pat that some of you may remember when they put the illustrated standard on a hanging towel, a linen hanging towel. Right. And anyway, that is in my house where I see it every day, even now. And the reason for that is because, just like Patty said, you have to see it. Someone has to pick out a dog in a line in a class and say, now, look at that one. And is there anything about it that seems a little off? You know, maybe, and that's my words now, extending from hers. But look at that overall outline of the dog. And as I said earlier, that's what a judge usually does when they first come in the ring. They look at a line of dogs and they can make some evaluations right off the bat about overall balance of the dog, including things like length of head, correct angulation of the rear, a correct shoulder, which is a problem that we have in the breed now, as many as you know. But this tool, to me, is what we're talking about in being able to see. You can talk about it, you can read the words, but you have to see this. And that's why the Breed Mentor program is so good, and I hope most of you will take advantage of that this weekend, where you sit with someone who can answer your questions about, well, what about that one? You know, I like the looks of that dog. What am I, you know, and you tell them what you think you're seeing and let them help you if there's anything that needs to be tweaked a bit in what you are looking at. But having an education background, this is one of the things we knew, and I thought it was really interesting that Pat put on here at the beginning of one of these things about, what was it? Teach me, show me, yeah, I can't find it now, but anyway, it's, here it is.
You're gonna read.
Tell me and I forget. Show me and I remember. Involve me and I understand. This was anonymous, and I never can remember the whole thing right. But the whole idea in education, if you have a class of students and you've got some that are not getting what you're talking about, you can sometimes put them with another kid in this class as a mentor who can explain it to them in a way that you would never in a million years know how to do to reach that kid to understand. You can do the same thing with adults. You can sit with an adult and look at something and then focus their attention in an area of the dog, for example, that you think they're not quite clear on yet, and help them understand that. You can, I have a term, and I don't know where I got it from, really. It's called footfall. And when I watch a dog gait, I can bring my eye down to the floor level and tell you and see, and tell you where their one foot picks up and the other one goes down. And that is part of that's a balance of the body of the dog. And you're watching the movement, and where the front foot picks up and the corresponding rear foot puts down should be almost like barely got it out of the way in time. You don't want them to touch, but you want them. That's a ground covering gait, a forward movement. If you have an upright shoulder, where you don't have the length and the angulation to get that front leg out of the way of the back one, you're going to have a dog that's going to move a little bit like you've been behind a car and you knew the frame was bent because here's the front wheels, you can see the front wheels and the back wheels are over here. It's kind of that image. So this is about movement, and some of the same things apply to the head. You can look at the length of head from a profile view, and what Patty was talking about on the stop, about how, I think it was Patty that said something about the stop, about looking at the balance of length of that head where the stop should be, and it says midway, half the length of the muzzle here and the length of the back skull behind the stop. And those things are kind of hard to understand, and you really do have to see it. And it would be real good if you will be sure and sit with someone, and when you have a question about that, let them maybe show you, okay, compare these two dogs, for example. And maybe the one's a tweak better in where the stop placement is than the other one. And that doesn't mean that they're both not good dogs. One of the things that my mentor, Gus Segrets, taught me is that there are many different types. And he used the expression, I never can remember which movie stars they were, but I think one of them was Sophia Loren and Elizabeth Taylor and Audrey Hepburn. But they're all beautiful in different ways. So you can have different type in your dogs, and they still can be correct, and they can still be balanced and create the picture that you hope to see. But that illustrated standard, if you don't have it, I would urge you to get it. And I hope someday the CCFA will redo those linen hanging towels, because I think that was probably one of the most ingenious things that they ever did, because you see it every day. You may not go to the written standard. There you go. You may not go to the written standard every day and flip through it and think, or maybe you didn't even bring one to the show with you. Maybe that's just not something you do anymore. But if you have a learning tool like that and you look at it every day, and there's another thing over there, Tony, you want to do me the honor, that leather strap? This was an art thing that I got, that someone took the illustrated standard and the heads of them and did a sable, and a blue head in what is considered the ideal collie head. And that's another thing I have hanging on my wall, looking at. I just enjoy looking at it because it shows a beautiful length of head, a nice crest of the arch up here, and the ears right, and the nice crest of neck. So when you look at something good all the time, it's going to get in your brain. It'll get in your brain, and you'll be able to pick them out, the better ones. And there'll be some that'll be really, really good, and some that are real good, and then some that, as I think Phyllis said, will knock your socks off. You'll look at, and Patty said that too. I think you can be standing at the ring with someone else, and you both go, because you see the same thing in a dog. And it's so wonderful to see something that makes you have that kind of a reaction. And it doesn't happen often enough anymore.
Go tell the person.
Yeah, and we all, to have that moment is like a gift from.
It's a good day. It's fun.
Like if you would hope for every day. Okay.
I know I can't talk loud enough.
Okay.
Is that good?
No.
No.
Pat, I think the question that you started with was what we envisioned, what the writers of the standard envisioned as far as giving
That's correct.
breeders something to.
Yes.
Okay.
Your interpretation of that.
What the authors wanted, what they intended, and that that is what I would like to say something about, although there are other things, and I think that if any of you haven't gotten it yet, something that every one of us feels is so important and should be one of the most important things is right in the first paragraph of the standard. When you think about those authors writing that, and it was what your total vision should be, and it is all about balance and harmony. And everyone else on this panel has talked about that down the line, so I'm not going to emphasize how important that is. But what I would like to say is that I think that when they wrote what we were going to live by, if we followed this all our lives, was a guideline that breeders, or a blueprint, I think as Bill called it, to follow in trying to pursue putting together a perfect collie, but they knew, and you can see it through the wording if you read it real carefully over and over and over, you get this, that they knew that that was impossible. There is no perfect collie or dog or person or anything else. But they were smart enough to, the way they worded it, to allow all this individual interpretation, because two people can look at that piece of art on the wall and say, oh, that's ugly. Or the other one could say, you're crazy. That is the most beautiful thing I ever saw. So the writers of the standard knew that this, I mean, I think they were so wise, they had so much vision to be able to put this together so that all of us would benefit from it over the years, yet that elusive thing was never going to happen. I mean, we all still keep trying, right? I mean, we're all still in it. We all still want to try for that, but it's not going to happen. But you come close, like Patty said. You've seen some that come close, and that is what makes your heart beat. But I think they were very smart, and they gave us something to go by, spelling it out without specifying, really. When Bill talked about expression, it's something you have to see. They don't tell you exactly what it is. You have to see it. You have to feel that happen. Yeah. It's almost a feeling when you look into that dog's face and you see that beautiful expression. So I just think that all I'd have to say was that I think the people that wrote our standard have given us something that's serviced us and lasted for all these years, and it's a wonderful thing, and it is different from other standards. And I think that balance and harmony in a dog are very important, and I would reread that first paragraph before I would reread anything else, because it gives you that picture of that dog running across the field like Sally was mentioning, or any other thing that your dog is doing. I just think it's a wonderful book that doesn't have very many pages to it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what we're hearing in this section is that balance says it all. If you think of a three-legged stool, if you saw off a little piece of one of them or take one off, that's not going to be much use to you. It's not going to have the balance it needs for stability, and that's in our hands. Now, it's looking like everybody could use a little bit of a break right now. So we're going to take a 15-minute break,